moving from traditional technical training to real transformation in how we support one another's mental well being. This session, From Training to Transformation, Reimagining Systems of Care, provides a space for a forward thinking conversation on changing the narratives in workforce education for suicide prevention. It focuses on creating spaces that foster compassion, promote open dialogue, and drive human centered changes across healthcare, education, and the workplace. We will explore how workforce education is evolving, not just focusing on knowledge, but actively building empathy, resilience, and genuine collaboration.
And to lead this wonderful session, I am just feeling honored to introduce all of you to our guest, Sudhanya Roy Chaudhary ma'am, who is a clinical psychologist registered with the RCI body and a dedicated educator. Rooted in both personal and professional experience, she shapes mental health care and education to be inclusive, context sensitive, and respectful of individual dignity. As an educator, she cultivates reflective, collaborative learning environments that connect knowledge with real world compassion. Ma'am also advocates for systems that are equitable and adaptive, engaging in research and policy to promote fairness in mental health care. Especially to her, mental health is a shared responsibility which requires evidence based and culturally sensitive care, honoring each individual's journey.
So, today we delve into how transforming workforce education and build more welcoming, supportive systems of care. So, let's get started. But before starting, I would like to inform you all that the chat box is open for you, and all doubts and queries are welcome there throughout the session. Also, you can raise your hands if you want to ask something directly to ma'am. Now we will begin with the questions. Ma'am, I would really like to know, when we talk about system of care, what does the phrase really mean?
Thank you so much, Nandini, Freya, for this kind introduction. I am very much humbled for this, and I would like to thank all the team members of PsyConnect for keeping trust on me for this topic, which is a very important, though sensitive. So I am very much humbled. Thank you so much to you all. So, coming to the first question, what is the meaning of system of care? So, basically, system of care, I would like to say it in a term of how what is the meaning of care in this term system of care, and how it is related to the word system. So first I would like to explain the word care means we all know that any service, any support, or any intervention that is needed for uh, those who are in need of that kind of support, whether they are coming from any kind of mental health related condition or any kind of crisis situation or anything. So care means something a person are in need of, and we are providing it in terms of service, support, or intervention. So it is care. So how we see traditionally the term care, we will explain, we will talk about it a bit. And the system of care means how care, because care is not coming from a single point of individual or any aspects of single identity related thing, for example a clinician or a school or anything. So there must be few coordination between various care providing bodies, and that creates the system. That is why when we're talking about system of care, that means that care which is provided in terms of organized, well coordinated, systemic way. That is the meaning of system of care. So basically system of care, when we are talking about system of care in our country or any country which are coming from low and middle income background, we can see it like that. But if we are going with a specific term, system of care in the context of high income countries, they are actually using the term system of care in the context of a very well coordinated system of any kind of support services or intervention of intervention, and that are mostly focused or dedicated to the young people and for children. So system of care is a term which is specifically used in the context of high income country, and that are mostly focused to child and adolescents mental health. But when we're talking about the system of care in traditional context in our country's context, so we can think about it like a any service which we are providing to those who are in need, and if it is well coordinated with other aspects of care providing bodies, that we can say this is a system of care which we are talking about. That we may be from our experiences we have encountered few situations. From there we have identified few things that lead to think us that we need to reimagine this system of care in our context.
Ma'am, thank you so much. We really get insight about what system of care actually means. And I have the second question related to it. In what ways do you feel that current system of care are inadequate or outdated?
Yes, the word inadequate or outdated, I will not say it is outdated or anything, because anything, because any practice must be grounded in research. We traditionally see research as something which is very much based on statistical analysis or other kind of analysis involving so much of resources there. But we can also see research in terms of everyday experience. When we are working with our clients, obviously we are collecting data or getting information from them, so we can also see this as data. So these kind of data can also actually ground us in that database and think about what things we need to incorporate from there in our practice. So every practice must be evidence based in this term, even if it is coming from a very small population, even if we are not fulfilling the criteria of that large sample kind of evidence base. But in everyday practice we need to incorporate all this information which we are getting from our clients in our practice. In that way we need to update our knowledge every day so that we can provide the adequate support to those who are in need. So that is why we can say the word outdated is not the right way in kind of when we are seeing or thinking about how to provide care. But uh, to be very honest, when we are implementing any update, the previous one gets outdated. So obviously when we are taking feedbacks and getting various informations from our clients, we feel that maybe these traditional kind of uh, therapeutic measures and therapeutic rules are a bit inadequate for them. That's why in my experience I have felt this kind of thing at uh, many times actually. So I felt that even if it is not kind of outdated, but we need to update that. So I can give you few examples why these things are not that much adequate. Because in the context of India, I can see that when we are coming from the professional background, even if we are coming from MPhil or any kind of professional courses or any kind of academic courses which are related to professional one. So there is no when we're talking about basically this conversation is actually related to suicide prevention. So I will focus on suicide prevention mostly in our conversation. That in most cases what I have found in my experience as a person coming from the lived experience of surviving a near fatal suicide attempt, as the same time I am coming from the background of clinical psychology. So what I have found that these are not adequate when we are providing the help to the person who are in need of that. In most cases, these I would like to give few examples, because we have trained to think about confidentiality, something like which is very which is a kind of a absolute thing in our practice. So but in case of suicidal clients or clients who are having suicide related distress, showing suicidal ideation related features or anything or any kind of warning signs, it must be, this rule must be broken, because the think they think in a way which need to be addressed from various aspects, like from their family members that need to be addressed. So confidentiality, we not think about it in a traditional way, how we are trained. So confidentiality needs to be break in the context of suicide when we are dealing with suicidal client. So the idea of confidentiality needs to be reimagined. And because it is absolutely recommended by various international and national bodies that if a client is showing any kind of suicide related distress and saying that I am feeling suicidal, and saying that I have suicide related ideations and I have planning or something like that, we are absolutely recommended to breach the confidentiality, because to save that client we need to breach that, and we are not recommended to keep it as a secret. So these kind of things which are given priority in our traditional training, like keeping confidentiality, must be reimagined when we are dealing with suicide related clients. And one thing which is lacking in our training and in the idea of our care profession is that it is coming from the expert. For example, it is coming from the expert like psychiatrist, like a clinical psychologist, or any psychologist who are in this field and have training to deal with suicidal clients. So it must not be like that, because when we're coming from this kind of notion, we're actually creating a barrier to those who are actually in need. So that is why, because we are maybe some of us are having the experience, lived experience, but many of us are not having the lived experience. So when we are coming from only the professional background, and we are not ready to accept or incorporate things from those who have lived experiences, we can create a huge barrier for those who are in need. So we need to incorporate lived experience based knowledge as well. We need to think about suicide prevention beyond our clinical setting, because suicide needs for few hours or few moments needs a few support which are absolutely beyond our clinical setting. So we need to involve community, we need to involve schools, we need to involve training, but we are not trained to think this way, although it is very much needed. That is why I think that the training and the way we are seeing the system of care in the context of suicide prevention is not adequate and needs to be updated.
Yes, ma'am. Based on your answer, I agree that in India, if we see the current cases of suicide, we need update and we need adaptations in our system of care. Linked to that, I have another question. Do you think the culture or the stigma, the silence that we have towards mental illness, does it impact the current system of care?
Absolutely, absolutely. Not only for suicide prevention related work, any mental health related work and mental health related any kind of work, that can be clinical intervention, that can be awareness campaigning, that can be any conversation, is actually hindered by the existing stigma related to it. So that is why I am saying that suicide prevention, we need to think about suicide prevention beyond the clinic. And it absolutely starts from awareness campaigning, where we can focus on what are those myths, misconceptions are prevalent about suicide. And these are the basic things which actually creates the barrier to provide help also. Because if the stigma related to suicide prevention is very much prevalent there, then people will not talk about their own distress, and people will not provide the ear to listen so that they can help, because stigma is actually creating the barrier between those who are in need and those who can help them. Even if a person is suffering from this kind of suicide related distress, often we see that phenomena like when a person died by suicide, people around them say, oh, I was not aware that that person was going through this kind of distress. How can he or she or they do that? But because of the stigma, maybe that person have tried to communicate, but because of the stigma, he or she or they are not able to communicate their distress. Even if we don't know, even if they may try it, but to whom he or she or they tried to communicate, they were not equipped because of this stigma. That is a stigma actually creates a huge barrier. And that is why suicide prevention is not about crisis helpline, acute crisis related intervention, or post prevention. It is absolutely about the situation where we can think about affirming uh, living conditions, and any where we can provide uh, low threshold support, where we can visualize visualize approachable helplines or any mental health support. Because if a person who is thinking of killing themselves, they are not thinking it in a very sudden or impulsive way. That idea, the thought may be coming in a very sudden moment, but it is there. The planning, maybe the planning was not there, but the ideation or the how their life is not kind of what I say, uh, proper to live in their way. These things are there already, so they may have tried to seek help, but help our help lines or help support systems were not visible or not approachable to them. That is why we need to visible those approachable support system, even if it is community based, even if it is any kind of mental health institution kind of a thing, but we need to make them visible. Before making all this possible, we need to address stigma, because without stigma it is not possible to make the steps for these things. In my experience, I have seen that many schools are okay with talking about broader aspects of mental health and anything. They are always agreeing to doing workshop on mental health or kind of topics related to mental health, anger management, procrastination, this kind of thing, attention and anything. But they I have seen that there is a huge resistance from the school, from the various community level sectors. I have seen that there are huge resistance from their end when we are talking about suicide. Sometimes they say, no, no need to bring that topic. You can talk about any resilience kind of thing, but you cannot bring that topic of suicide in your presentation or like that. And even if I have seen many clients who are mostly adolescents, have tried to communicate their suicidal ideation or suicide related thing like death wishes to their teachers, but they were kind of a punished for this thing. So even if we know that suicide is decriminalized in our country via Mental Health Care Act, but the practice of criminalizing is still present. It is documented as decriminalized, but the practice is there. Even if a person is talking about their suicide ideation or suicide, they are punished in some way. So we need to think about it so that we can work on this situation. And stigma is the core of all these barriers when we're talking about suicide prevention.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that stigma is the big reason behind not the mental health is not able to grow properly. The people who are facing mental illness, they are not able to open up about their issues. And being criminalized for committing suicide, I guess this is a very big issue. Related to this, I want to know that how training can be helpful in the world of care system. And as we are focusing on approaching from training to transformation, what does that mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we need to think the suicide prevention obviously beyond the clinical city, beyond the clinician, to transform the care to other stakeholders as well. But we know that when because any when there is a huge stigma related to anything, we need to pursue, we need to put arguments. So that is why it is, we know that when we are putting our argument, so the background of your work is very much important. That is why I am saying that training of mental health professionals needs to be reimagined. Because if a person is saying that I am a clinical psychologist, I am having lived experience related to suicide attempt, and a person who is saying I am someone not coming from any background related to lived experience or background from any profit or any professional background. So we can think that if both of these person are approaching to people who are having stigma, obviously people will trust the first person because of their credentials or anything. So we who are coming from the professional background have huge responsibility to break the stigma, to reimagine the suicide prevention and change the narrative about suicide prevention. That is why I am saying, I'm not saying that it is the suicide prevention is the sole responsibility of clinicians or mental health professionals. It is not like that. But when we are making the argument, when we are doing the advocacy against the suicide related stigma, that we actually have a huge responsibility and accountability. That is why, and this accountability are grounded in our training. That is why I'm saying that our training needs to be reimagined in some way. So that is the thing. I absolutely agree with you that obviously we need to reimagine the training process too.
All right, ma'am. And now that you also said that whenever the professionals start to talk about suicide or something very prominently, schools or in somewhere, the school somewhere stops them to do not use the words so openly. So similar to that, I would like to know what are some other barriers that you have found so far in your practice journey that are very prominent when people try to transform the system of care.
Yes, yes. In most cases, there is a huge socialization of clinicians like us, that we are not allowed to talk about suicide directly. But the evidence says the opposite, actually. But it was not incorporated in our training, because I think that when we are starting any kind of training related to mental health, it is the primary duty of the those who are creating the curriculum or the syllabus, that we are someone who will be exposed to clients who are having this kind of distresses. Because in my experience, what I have seen is that 98% of, actually 98%, I have calculated this actually when I was following that Excel sheet. So it is absolutely 98% clients who came to me are having suicide related distress in any form. That can be death wishes, that can be ideation, planned previous attempt, anything like that they are having. And they are 98%. And in many cases I have seen that uh, this is the threshold point of them to reach to go for or seeking professional help. So we must be very much aware of the fact that suicide related distress is very much common in our population. And when we are talking about coming from India or any middle low and middle income country, we can see that mental health related help seeking is very much uncommon. And in many cases it is the suicide related distress which creates the threshold for the people to seek help. So we need to keep it in our mind. And it is I have not seen this kind of uh, thing in many training, even if we are talking about graduation related courses, master's courses or professional courses. So I would say that suicide prevention must be treated as first aid. So it must be the point number one of any kind of training related to mental health, whether it is absolutely professional or peripherally, if it is professional. So it must be the point number one. A suicide related thing must be taken as first aid, because when we're talking about physical first aid related things, obviously we do not wait until we are getting kind of this kind of professional degree, then we'll know about this physical health related first aid. So suicide, we need to think about suicide like that, because it is about saving lives. So I think that any kind of professional courses, whether in terms of internship structure or any kind of course or workshop structure, this must be incorporated as a priority. Then what rules we need to break when we are talking about suicide related distress, and which actually differs from our traditional training, that must be pointed out. For example, this kind of confidentiality, we need to give confidentiality for all cases except two. One is homicide and another one is suicide. So it needs to be uh, surfaced in any training. Another thing I have found, which is very much needed, is uh, that I have mentioned, that silence around suicide. No, in our training, in our MPhil training, we were also said that it is your duty in your first session, but it was not very much prevalent in the graduation related training or masters related training. So we were told to ask your client whether they are feeling any kind of suicide related distance in a very subtle way if possible, or even if you can ask it directly, because there can be no sugar coated word other than suicide, or if you ever think of, oh, you are not here, you ever thought of killing yourself, this kind of thing you can actually use. You can say that people who are in distress sometimes thinks this kind of is there any chance that you have also felt this kind of thing? So this is very much needed in the first station. You need to ask in a way that is absolutely uh, convenient with the age range. Obviously you will ask this question differently to a child, differently to an adult. That modification must be there, but this question must be asked. And after that, not only asking this, you need to make this person feel safe and create the safety network for them. That is a must thing. So this kind of thing, I think, very much needed when we are talking about training, any kind of training related to mental health, because suicide is a trans diagnosis, trans diagnostic symptom, and at the same time, when we're talking about suicide in the context of low and middle income country, obviously there is very less evidence that it is related to any kind of mental health condition. Mostly they are societal uh, realities. So we should not wait to diagnosis to make the diagnosis and think about the treatment planning, then we will talk about suicide related thing. It is not the way which we think suicide prevention or anything suicide related intervention in practical sense. And barriers, you have said that barriers, because what creates the barrier actually, if we are not trained this way, obviously we will need to rely on the training. So if we are not trained in this way, then this lack transforms in our everyday practice. Actually, I think we need to think about these two.
Exactly. Thank you so much, ma'am. You very well structurally pointed out even the points that we have to keep in mind and also the barriers as well. Now, coming to the training part, actually, in your opinion, what do you think? Like, how can the professionals be encouraged to hold that safe space for being empathetic, for being genuine with the conversations they are dealing with?
Yes. First comes the accountability, which is very much important. So, accountability, when you are taking the accountability for your client, the things actually changes. Things actually change when we're thinking in terms of accountability, because And second thing, I will explain about it how I want to put the word accountability in suicide related or any kind of clinical interventions or anything, and community interventions. First one is accountability. Second one is we need to be very much aware of our professional limitations, and we need to break the hierarchy of our expert position. So these three things I think we need to incorporate, and we need to be very self-reflective. And one thing I must add here is, in our traditional training we are asked to be very much value free or value neutral. So it was said to us that no therapist must be someone who is like a blank sheet of paper. So this thing needs to be changed when we are talking about our accountability, and when we are talking about uh, creating the change. Because when we are coming from a background from a as it was said that like a blank page, so we will not be able to provide the accountable care, because we know that it is not limited to the clinical setup. Because when we're talking about, mostly talking about particularly talking about suicide is a multifactorial thing, and there are in again I am saying, when we're talking about suicide in the context of low and middle income country, it is mostly social than any diagnostic related thing. So we need to focus on other contextual factors. We need to advocate for poverty, discrimination, marginalization, which are actually creating the space of suicide related distress. So in our therapeutic setup we need to train ourselves so that we can validate their experience in terms of contextualizing things. Because in our training we were trained to see any kind of distress, even if it is suicide related distress, in terms of individual related or individual in an individualized way. So we need to train ourselves how to contextualize uh, this kind of distress, whether it is kind suicide related one. How we can train ourselves to be a context sensitive practitioner, because context sensitivity actually validates their experiences. And I need to mention that validation doesn't mean that you are agreeing to their decision. No, it is not. You are just validating the context, so that the people doesn't do not feel that they are a failure. You need to put this thing like a way that your context, I understand your context and it is valid that you are feeling this kind of distress, but we can think about how to make your life a better place. So that we can put this conversation forward. Because if we are not able to validate their experiences, they actually feel that when I was coming from the background of my lived experience, when I see those things, I felt that I was very much invalidated, because my context were not validated by the previous therapist. So obviously it is very much needed to think any kind of distress contextually. How we can be context sensitive, we need to, obviously, because we are coming from academic and professional background, we have access to resources which are endorsed by national or international bodies related to suicide prevention. I will focus on suicide prevention today. So there are so much resources, so much research articles which actually focuses on the social determinants of suicide and suicide related distress. We need to get informations, and we need to build the understanding on that ground, because it is absolutely lacking in our training is all about these are the diagnostic feature of this kind of thing, these are the intervention thing, and most of them are not cross culturally validated. Obviously they are evidence based, obviously we need to implement that in our setting. It is of primary importance, but we need to contextualize it. So we need to think about these distresses beyond individual distress in a social way, by reading articles, reading resources, by making contact with people who are coming from various marginalized background and from diverse socio-demographic backgrounds. First of all, we need to do that. Second, what is the meaning of accountability? Accountability means that what we can do, what we are able to do, and what we are ethically, what's are our ethical imperative to do. That is one. And it also includes where acknowledging our limitations, because I am a clinical psychologist. I have to accept my limitation, that even if in many cases suicide related distress, medication is needed, but I can't provide that. I need to refer my client to a psychiatrist. And here is my limitation. Obviously, I will provide the parallel psychotherapeutic interventions, which is also very much important. But for that matter, I need to refer my client to someone else. And when I am talking about suicide related distress, I must include one thing, that there are so many community workers, so many licensed social psychiatric social workers and other community stakeholders who can create a huge transformation in suicide related work, suicide prevention related work. Obviously, I am not able to do that what they can actually do. So we need to understand the limitation, that I am, my skills are this, I am limited to this, and I need to obviously rely on other person for the best interest of my client. So that accountability comes with limitations, and acknowledging our limitation, and where we need to rely on other professionals. So other professionals and paraprofessionals and other trained uh, quote unquote lay workers who are trained to do specific things, because there are many evidences where trained lay counselors actually did wonderful job in preventing suicide. It was prevalent in various countries in Africa. It was also happened in Goa too. And in Pakistan, we can see Bikram Patel is one of those person who actually talked about how lay counselors can be trained to work in this kind of field to scale up the services. So we need to collaborate with other stakeholders. Other stakeholders can be school counselors, any lay counselors, family members, community members, political leaders also can be take the responsibility, and other mental health professionals, students of psychology. I have seen how they are sharing our task, how students of psychology are actually sharing the task, because they because people are trying to reach anyone which is who is accessible. So psychology students are accessible to people, so they are saying things that I'm feeling this kind of distresses, and they're reaching out to the psychology students, and psychology students are asking us, ma'am, these kind of things are happening, how can we help, what can we do. So we need to rely on all those bodies, not only uh, it's like those professionals are the expert and only they can do this, and this is my client and I need to work on this client without collaborating with other bodies. This must not be there. In many cases, when people are coming from marginalized background, uh, connecting them to a community which is working on that specific marginalization related work can create a huge change in their life. Sometimes legal assistance is very much needed. So we need to think our the care provision in this way, and that must be embedded in our training so that we can transform it in our practice. And these are the things I think I need to put forward related to this question.
Now that we are talking about that, how equally important it is to collaborate with other stakeholders also, I think it becomes very much important to specifically talk that how can the workforce education incorporate the real time feedback from those who have the lived experiences to continually adapt and improve the training methods.
Exactly. And what I have missed in the last question is that when we are talking about other stakeholders and lived experience, people who are having lived experience is one of the most important pillar of that workforce actually. So when we are talking about how to incorporate the inputs from lived experience, people who are having lived experience is very much important. So how can we incorporate that? First of all, we need to break the hierarchy uh, in the session, that this is nothing like sitting this side of the table or this side of the table. So we need to what we need to try that we need to make that when a client is coming to you for intervention, we need to put this thing that it's their life and they are the expert in that setting and that dynamics actually. And I am a clinician, obviously I will help them with my disciplinary knowledge and any kind of knowledge which is helpful for them, but the expert is the client here. So we need to keep this in our mind in the first place, and after that we need to get the feedback in various way, and we need to give the client that confidence that you are the expert and I may be wrong sometimes in understanding your phenomenology. So you it is absolutely fine to for you to interrupt me and say that no, this may not be the way in my case, so this is the way. This kind of feedback must be a process of the therapy in first place. This is the primary way I have encountered that how I can incorporate feedback. And after that, one thing we need to keep it in our mind that we need to read about lived experience based uh, uh, articles, resources. And obviously when we are thinking about asking someone about what to do, we need to think beyond the clinicians, the researchers. We need to think about the person who are having lived experience, because they can provide us the most unique and most important thing which need to be included and to modify the care structure of the system of care. And that's it.
Ma'am, as we can understand that the people who are facing mental health issues, they do have to face the stigma and the issue related to mental health on a daily basis. But I also want to know that what are the burnout and the fatigue that are faced by the people who are working on the front lines of mental health.
Yes, it's very much important actually. So those who are working the front line, even if they are coming from professional background or the family caregiver, absolutely burnout is a huge thing. And when we are talking about suicide prevention, we are not given the opportunity to talk about the burnout, but it is very much important to think about burnout. And there we need to think that when we are talking about responsibility, we need to think about how to share the responsibility, because it is not possible for a person to prevent a suicide of another person. So when we are coming from a professional background or any other background, we need to keep it in our mind that the responsibility is not only on me or only on a particular person. So first of all, we need to keep it in our mind that we need to share the responsibility. How we can share the responsibility? If I am coming from a professional background, if I am the therapist of the client who is having suicide related distress, first of all we need to inform their near and dear ones first. Obviously this is the first step to share the responsibility. Other than that, what we can do, other community stakeholders, like any, if the social workers are available, if there is a peer support group available, if any NGO is available, any, if that person is coming from any workplace and there is a psychological support system in terms of providing psychological care or any support group, we can talk to them and we can help the client to reach to those sectors or resources. We can also connect the person, if the person is coming from any school or college or university, to the support system of that educational institute. We need to share that responsibility. It is the first point to deal with the burnout, and we need to think about that when we are thinking of providing help. Responsibility can create the burden on us. That's why first step is to share the responsibility with other bodies and collaborate. That is why collaboration is very much needed. And that there can be also a situation like that. One of my, if I'm not coming from a clinical background, or not talking about a mental health professional. For example, I am a person and my friend is showing this kind of distress and sharing this kind of thing. Maybe that time I am also struggling with this kind of thing. Then what to do that time? Obviously, if that person is very much uh, uh, in the distress, we need to make that person's environment safe, and so we need to connect that person with other people, so that they stay connected with other people and stay safe. And that time I may step back from that situation, because I need to take care of myself, because I am also having this kind of distress. So first thing, we need to share the responsibility. It is not one's responsibility to save a person. We need to keep it in our mind that. And obviously, when we're talking about accountability, we need to believe that in which field we are working and coming from any kind of background, one thing we must believe that suicide is preventable. We need to believe that, so that, and we need to know what are the steps to prevent that, and we need to believe in that step too by ourselves. And this is the way how can we deal with our burnouts. And other than that, obviously we can take professional help. It is always there, and it is always recommended.
Yes, ma'am. Apart from mental health professional, the families also face the mental stress when the family member is going through some kind of mental illness. Could you please tell us how can families or community members can be engaged as active partners in the system of care transformation?
Absolutely, absolutely. So family feels very much helpless in kind of this kind of situation, because of the stigma, because of the lack of resources, lack of infrastructure. And again, when we're talking about a country which is coming from the low and middle income background, there are so much barriers, socioeconomic barriers. So we can understand that it is very much difficult for them to handle this kind of situation. So, in the first line, what they need to go through is the huge stigma, and how to deal with that. They need to. Uh, First step can be they need to reach out to the competent uh, person who can provide them help. And it is not the responsibility of the family, because maybe if the resource is not accessible to them, they are not able to do that. So the experience of the family as a caregiver can be uh, brought to a good place by the other community members. So the family members need to uh, go to the professional, the competent to the competent person who can provide the help. So first point is that. After that, because if that person is competent and trained, even if they are not having any kind of license or registration, but trained in a proper way by other licensed or registered professionals, so they are equipped to help this family with other resources. For example, proper referral is very much important, so that the family feel a less burnout, or feel the family are in a better place when they are providing the care to the other family member who is suffering. So proper referral sources is very much important, so they can go to the person who is having competence there, and they can also go to the local governmental hospital, so that they can get few referrals from there. Even if it was mandatory to have a mental health care set up in any kind of primary healthcare setup according to Mental Health Care Act, but it was not that much implemented. We all know that. But they can provide them the referral, and from there they can get the proper help. At the same time, if I am actually saying from a for those who are not having that much access, who are not coming from urban background, who are coming from rural background, having lack of resources, because I have seen clients when I was in my MPhil training, they are not able to go for help where they are referred, because most of them are daily wage worker. So it was not possible for them to go for a session far from their home, and where they need to compromise 1 day wage and the expenses, although it was there in the mental health care act that it this will be reimbursed by the state authority, but it was not implemented. So it is very much difficult from the family, for the family, when we are lacking so much of infrastructure. But I must say that they must go to someone who can provide their help, and most easiest way can be the local government healthcare sector. And when if we are talking about those who are having resources, I would say that family members must go to the international national resources, must read the stories of caregivers who have provided care to the person who are having a diverse kind of mental health related problems. They can join the community. They even if it is not possible to join physically, they can join the community virtually. They can talk about it. They can be the advocate, because when we are coming from a background of caregiving, and we have seen how stigma can make our life in a very bad condition, we can do advocacy for that, and that actually empowers us, and that can create where we can claim the space that can also help us to deal with the burnout and connect with other people. That can be the way to deal the burnout. Other than that, obviously, if it is possible, for it is recommended that caregivers must take professional help along with the person who is suffering.
Very truly said, ma'am. Um, Also, I think we have surpassed our time limit also, but I'm very curious to know one answer from you. Like we have seen in almost every field of psychology, there are some ethical boundaries to all the professionals. So in this area, when we try to transform the care system also, are there any ethical considerations that arises when we shift from the traditional standardized training protocols to more personalized and human centered approaches? Are there any boundaries?
Human centered, basically what is there in the documents are absolutely human centered. If we go through all these documents, they are very much person centered. They're very much coming from humanitarian ground. But what it is lost when it is transformed, or it is lost in training, in practice. Actually, the documents are absolutely fine, because all these things I was saying are mostly documented, but it is not implicated. So we need to focus. I will not say that ethical considerations needs to be modified a lot. There may be few things which can be modified, but I have not seen anything which needs to be drastically changed. But we need to, and obviously in training also we have seen it is just a just a unit, just an unit, and we need to write answers from that unit, and that's all. We are not making it everyday reality. We are not bringing it in our everyday conversations. So if we bring this kind of conversation, what is ethical standard, what we need to focus, we need to bring these ethics related conversation in our everyday practice. When we are talking about these are the interventions for this kind of diagnosis, this can be done this way, this is the form of rules of implementing this kind of intervention, these things. We need to talk about ethical guidelines. What are the ethical limitations, and what is my limitation, what is the meaning of competence. So we need to talk about it in a everyday practice. I will not say that needs to be modified, but the modification must be in our practice, in our everyday practice. We need to have conversations like ethics of care, ethics related to system of care. And that is why I would like to thank PsyConnect for this, for creating this space at it where we can start this conversation.
Yes, ma'am. We are really grateful to have you here with us. The session was really helpful and insightful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing your valuable time and thoughts with us today. If anyone have any questions, you can please ask this time.
Or I will share few helplines and resource materials related to suicide prevention. So in the monthly session group as well, so that you can get the access of a few
That
things.
would be
If
really helpful, ma'am.
all these are there in the various websites, but I will provide it you in that group.
Sure,
Okay.
ma'am. We truly appreciate your guidance and a big thank you to everyone who joined and listened.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you all.
Thank you,
If
ma'am.
no
We
one
hope.
has any query, then you guys can show a thumbs up so that we can be ending the session. All right, all right. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. We hope this conversation sparked very much new thoughts and gave you fresh ideas and insights regarding the topic. So, yeah, for the next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and join us for the next session of PsyConnect. See you all there.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
ma'am.
much, ma'am.